Shalom. Want to give honor and praise unto the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. Call this one here the color game. And this video is entitled such because there are those who would like to sit there and state that the people in the world outside of the continent of Africa was anything other than what we will call black of today. And I would like to sit there and present a matter to sit there and let it be known and shown that such is not the case. Okay, now one of the things to sit there and point out, first off, is this particular book right here. The name of this book is called Timelines of History, and on page 37, we see a picture of the ancient people of Persia. And as we can see, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that these people were a people of color. Now, this is dated from the Palace of Susa, S-U-S-A, and you can even look this up online. And this is during the era of King Darius of Persia. So that right there just goes to show emphatically how the ancient people of Persia, that is to say the people of Elam, that is to say the people in what we call today as Iran, looked. Okay, so that way we can gain some understanding concerning that. Another thing I would like to sit there and show concerning this. Now, mind you, Iran is in the continent of Asia. And you've seen how those pictures had them looking, right? Now, another thing I'd like to show, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, is this particular picture right here. And this right here has been shown in other times and in other videos, but I feel it's necessary for this one as well. And this right here is showing Syrian tribute bearers inside of one of the walls in the temple in Thebes. Now, mind you, Thebes was called in the Bible the land of No, N-O, in the book of Nahum in the Bible. Now, Thebes itself was called the land of Waset by the ancient Egyptians. So this right here just goes to show you, it says what? Syrian tribute bearers bringing ointment, horn, quiver, vessels, writing, and child on a fragment of plaster from a wall of a 15th century tomb at Thebes. So that's right here, the 15th century BCE. We're talking 1400 something BCE. So that's over 1,400 and something years before the Common Era. And this is how the people from Syria, mind you, Syria is adjacent to Lebanon, and how they looked. Okay, the capital of Syria was Damascus. These are the same people that Merneptah Stella, sometime after the 14th century BCE, refers to as the people of Kor, K-H-O-R. And it's the same people that the Bible refers to as the people of Aram, A-R-A-M. Okay, now, this right here shows a picture saying kneeling Syrians and Negroes decorate the platform footstool of Amenhotep III enthroned. So the way they're showing this is saying Negroes, meaning blacks. Now, while that, what they're sarcastically, no offense intending, are saying is that you had the people in the land from Syria, which we can see is obviously looking like the same people as the people called the Negroes. And so for my argument, I'll sit there and state to anyone who sit there and states that the Asiatics or the people that were outside of the continent of Africa were anything other than what we call black. And you can look at these pictures right here. This is from the era of Amenhotep III. This is the 18th dynasty of Egypt. And we see as what? A Negro, Syrian, Negro, Syrian, Negro. Now, what then really is the difference between this guy right here and this guy right here, other than one is darker in complexion than the other? Now, for whatever it's worth, in the 1700s, in the 18th century, they were speaking about the difference in categorizing dark-skinned and light-skinned black people as slaves. So that just goes to show you that there were, for centuries, what we will call today as people of light-skin tone. You understand? So what some people unfortunately have done is try to sit there and debase the idea of saying that anybody who is not within or from the continent of Africa itself had to have been anything other than what we would call black today. Meanwhile, there are numerous upon numerous evidence to support the opposite of such. Now, I like to sit there and show, if we will, brothers and sisters, the book of Tacitus, the histories. And I like to sit there and go into what they call Tacitus, the histories, in this book right here, so that way people can see the source of what I'm talking about. Tacitus, the histories. And we are on page 234. And this is speaking about the origin of the people or called the Judeans, or the people of the Jews. That was part of the nation of Israel. And it says the following. It says, while there are many who think the Jews of Ethiopian stock, driven by fear and hatred to immigrate in the reign of King Cepheus, another tradition makes them, speaking of the Jews or the Judeans, another tradition makes them Assyrian refugees, who, lacking lands of their own, occupied a district of Egypt, and later took to building cities of their own and tilling Hebrew territory in the frontier land of Syria. So one of the things to sit there and point out is that in what they call Tacitus, the histories, it distinctly sits there and shows you what? It says, there are those who think that the Jews of Ethiopian stock, meaning that there are those in the days of Tacitus, and he was a historian dated to the 1st century AD, and that people in his day and time thought that the Judeans, the Jews, the tribe of Judah, which is part of the children of Israel, were a people that were of Ethiopian stock. Now, that becomes important because we're going to sit there and get into another presentation concerning that. I have another reference book for source purposes and to sit there and support my understanding concerning this. And it's called The African Presence in Early Europe, edited by Ivan Sertima. May he now rest in peace. And on page 144 of this popularly widely known book, and not for nothing, may she rest in peace. My mother and I used to sit there and look at this book, but it seemed, not trying to get off the subject, every time I had the money, I never went over to Midtown Manhattan and picked it up from the brothers selling it on the street. Then when I didn't have the money is when I would be in Manhattan and I would see it, but like, oh, I can't get it now. So eventually I just buckled down and like, you know what? I got it. Let me run over, pick up the book. And it's a classic book. And I advise people who care to know anything in reference about Black history concerning the Moors, concerning different pictures that they have of Black heroes and heroines in the catacombs of Europe. This is a very good book in reference of such. Okay, now, in this same book here that we've been speaking of, on page 144, we read the following. The Greeks themselves, approaching from the east in search of Egypt, called the Black Africans they found there Ethiops, from the Greek words Athene, to burn, and ops, meaning face. Ancient Ethiopia, also known as Kush or Kush, spelt with a K or spelt with a C, formed an empire in much of the same location as the present-day country of the same name. It says formed an empire in much of the same location as the present-day country of the same name. Now, yes, brothers and sisters, I am a Hebrew, I am an Israelite. This particular presentation is not, no disrespect intended, focused on the house of Israel. It's focused on people that are of color, or we will call Black, even outside of the nation of Israel, that's not part of the continent of Africa. Now, this right here distinctly says that when the Greeks were traveling from the east in search of Egypt, where were they coming from to say it was going from the east in search of Egypt is because the Greeks, brothers and sisters, were in Babylon. You understand? At that particular time, and after the era when Alexander had, and actually a little before Alexander and after Alexander, the Greeks had settled in what we will call Babylon of today. All right. So now getting into another particular subject. That's why that book there says traveling from the east, because in order to get from Babylon to Egypt, you have to go west. Okay. Now I have in the same book right here, African Presence in Early Europe, edited by Ivan Sertima. We read the following on page 151, and it says, Arabia itself had first been populated by Black people, as Professor Houston cites in her classic text, Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire. The Kushites were the original Arabians, for Arabia was the oldest Ethiopian colony. According to Professor Houston, ancient literature assigns their first settlement to the extreme southwestern point of the peninsula. From thence, they spread northward and eastward over Yemen, Hadramaut, and Oman. Now, one of the things I wanted to sit there, brothers and sisters, and point out emphatically is that what we're speaking about is in the land that we call today of southern Saudi Arabia. So when it says Yemen and Oman and so forth and so on, those people right there, as stated in another video that I did, blessed be the Most High, entitled Israelites Don't Hate Africa, the people called the Cushites extended all the way into what from modern Ethiopia, with it being colonized, Somalia, going across the Red Sea, going all over into what we call the southern part of Saudi Arabia. You understand? So that way, such things as that can be understood. Now, for clarity purposes, I like to sit there and show a map, so that way we can see the lands that we're speaking of. This right here, brothers and sisters, is modern Ethiopia. This being Yemen and Oman. All that land right there was all populated by the, as well as Somalia, was all populated by the people that we call the Cushites, or that the Greeks, as stated earlier, traveling from the east over here in search of Egypt, which is here, they called the people when they got over here the Ethiops, or the burnt face. You see what I'm saying? So that's where it boils down to with that. So these people, and these people, and as the Hidden Colors DVD points out, this entire landmass at one time was all called Ethiopia. That's why over here, if you go west of Mauritania and west of Guinea, you will see the Atlantic Ocean, which in some maps have it as located or called the Ethiopian Sea. So we have to sit there and let it be noted and understood what we're speaking about and what lands we're talking about. All right, so that way we can gain some understanding concerning that type of matter. Now, in continuing on in this same book, African Presence in Early Europe, we read the following. In fact, the ancient Greeks made no distinction between the mother country and her colony, calling them both Ethiopia. The author goes on to say this on page 152. As may be expected, W.E.B. Du Bois makes some interesting points regarding the use of the word Arab, having noted that many Arabs were dark-skinned, sometimes practically black. One more time. Having noted that many Arabs were dark-skinned, sometimes practically black. I read that on purpose for a reason. Often have Negroid features in here that may be Negro in quality. Du Bois reasons that the Arabs were too nearly akin to Negroes to draw an absolute color line. So that right there is very important to let it be noted. And we know good and well that what? The home of the Arabs, Saudi Arabia, and so forth and so on, is not in what we'll call the continental place called Africa. Yet you have scholars speaking about them as being Negroid, being black. So let that be noted and understood from the premise of what we're speaking about. Now, I like to sit there and take the time out, brothers and sisters, to show other pictures, if we will. Okay, so that way we can gain some understanding. This right here is another famous picture. This right here is a picture of actually a friend to the Israelites. This guy's name here was called Taharqa. Okay, so that way we can gain some understanding. Taharqa was one of the Ethiopian people that ruled in Egypt's 25th dynasty. In history, you will see that he's mentioned in the Bible in the book of 2 Kings chapter 19 in the Bible. 2 Kings chapter 19 when you get the chance to read it. You read about this particular guy right here named Taharqa. He actually, brothers and sisters, was a friend to the Israelites. Okay? So let that be noted and understood. And then we see right here, this here is a picture and painting from an Ethiopian wall. Ethiopians painted inside of an Egyptian wall. So we see these are the Cushites. All right. So let that be noted. These are some of the same kind of people that when the Greeks sat there and saw them, they said, oh, these are the Ethiops. All right. So we have an Ethiopian ruler in Egypt, Taharqa. You can even look that up. Then we see right here, as stated from earlier, we got pictures of the ancient people of Persia, and they're black. Then you got the people that we see right here, and then we see them also being black. And not trying to sit there and make it seem as if somebody is bashing Egypt, because that's what they say. Oh, y'all always trying to bash Egypt. No, we're not. Let's look at this picture, though, right here. This is Pharaoh Ramses, humbling, as it says, servants. They have what they call here a Libyan. They have here what they call an Asiatic and a Nubian. But if you look at the people here he has them grasped by the hair or a rope or so forth and so on, what color are they all? One darker than the other, but they're all black. We need to get the Willie Lynch out the so-called conscious community. We all one color. Part 2 coming up.